The rain fell in sheets that morning, turning the busy downtown streets into rivers of rushing water. Andre hurried through the downpour, his courier bag slung across his chest, protected by his worn waterproof jacket. He had been a bike courier for 3 years now, a job that paid the bills while he painted at night in his tiny apartment. Today was especially important. He needed to deliver a package to a law firm in 20 minutes, and the weather wasn't helping. Andre pedaled harder, weaving through traffic, his tires splashing through puddles. The courier company had been clear. This delivery was for one of their biggest clients, and it couldn't be late. One more late delivery, and he might lose this job. With rent due next week and an art supply bill still unpaid, he couldn't afford that. He turned the corner sharply, leaning into the curve when a sleek black car pulled up to the curb just ahead. Andre squeezed his brakes, but the wet pavement extended his stopping distance. He swerved to avoid the car, but it was too late. As the car door opened, a woman stepped out directly into his path. Andre jerked his handlebars hard to the right, nearly avoiding her, but his shoulder clipped the object she was carrying, an elegant handbag that looked more expensive than anything he'd ever owned. The impact sent both Andre and the bag flying. He tumbled onto the wet sidewalk, his bike clattering beside him. The bag landed in a deep puddle with a splash that seemed to echo in Andre's ears. When he looked up, he saw that the force had torn the delicate leather along its side, exposing the lining inside. "I'm so sorry," Andre said, scrambling to his feet, ignoring the pain in his elbow and hip. "I didn't see you coming out. Are you hurt?" The woman didn't answer right away. She was tall, with short dark hair cut in an expensive style that somehow remained perfect despite the rain. Her tailored suit probably cost more than Andre made in 2 months, but it was her eyes that caught his attention. Sharp, calculating, taking in every detail of the situation. She bent down, picking up the damaged bag with careful fingers. Water dripped from its torn edge. "Do you know what this is?" she asked, her voice surprisingly calm. Andre shook his head, heart pounding. He didn't know much about women's fashion, but he could tell it was the kind of thing he'd never be able to afford. "This is a limited edition Kaizen bag. There are only 12 in the world." She turned it in her hands, examining the tier. It cost $20,000. Andre felt sick. $20,000. That was nearly a year's income for him. How? Could anyone spend that much on a bag? He looked at his bike, checking for damage, buying time to think. The front wheel was slightly bent, but it would still work. The package in his courier bag seemed intact. "I can't pay for that," he finally said, his voice tight. "I don't have that kind of money, but I'm really sorry. Maybe insurance could cover it? I could give you my information." The woman looked at him then, really looked at him, as if seeing past his courier uniform, past the rain soaking his clothes, past the anxiety on his face. Her expression changed slightly, but Andre couldn't. "Read it. What's your name?" she asked. "Andre Thomas," he answered, wondering if she was already planning the lawsuit that would ruin him. She nodded once, placed the damaged bag inside her car, and took out a small umbrella. "You should be more careful, Mr. Thomas," she said, then turned and walked away toward the gleaming office building across the street, not looking back once. Andre stood there, rain running down his face, confused by her reaction. No shouting, no demands for payment, not even a request for his contact information. Just that odd, assessing look. He climbed back on his bike, wincing at the pain in his side. The package still needed to be delivered, and he was now dangerously close to being late. As he pedaled away, Andre couldn't shake the feeling that something strange had just happened, something more significant than a simple accident. The law firm was only a few blocks away. Andre made it with 2 minutes to spare, his clothes dripping on the polished marble floor of the lobby, as he handed over the package and got the electronic signature. The receptionist wrinkled her nose at the puddle forming around his feet, but said nothing. Back outside, the rain had finally stopped. Andre checked his phone for his next pickup. Nothing yet. He should have been relieved for the break, but his mind kept going back to the woman and her damaged bag. $20,000. Who spent that kind of money on something you just carried? Things in? It made no sense to him. That evening, Andre's small apartment felt even smaller than usual. The space was divided between living essentials and his art. Canvases leaned against every wall, some finished, others works in progress. Shelves were crowded with paint tubes, brushes, and sketches. A small easel stood by the window, catching the best of the natural light. His side ached from the fall as he heated leftover pasta on his small stove. The bent wheel on his bike would need fixing, another expense he couldn't really afford. But at least the woman hadn't demanded payment for the bag. Maybe she'd just write it off as a loss. People with that kind of money probably didn't miss $20,000 the way Andre would miss the 50 it might cost to fix his wheel. He ate quickly, then turned to his current painting. It was a cityscape at dawn, the light breaking, over the buildings in shades of gold and pink, the streets below still in shadow. Andre lost himself in the work, as he always did. Painting was the one thing that made sense to him, the one place he felt truly himself. His art teacher in high school had recognized his talent, had encouraged him to apply to art school, but the scholarships hadn't been enough, and Andre couldn't bear the thought of the debt. So he painted when he could, submitted work to small galleries occasionally, sold a piece now and then. It wasn't the life he'd dreamed of, but it was something. His phone buzzed as he was cleaning his brushes, a text from his mother. "How are you doing, honey? Dad and I worry." Andre sighed. His parents had always supported his art, but they worried about his financial stability. They didn't say it outright, but he knew they wished he'd find a more reliable career. Their concern came from love, but sometimes it felt like pressure. "I'm good," he texted back. "Sold a painting last week. Working on something new now." He didn't mention the accident with the expensive bag. His mother would just worry more. Andre set his phone down and looked at his painting. It was good. Maybe one of his best. There was something about the light, the contrast between the illuminated tops of the buildings and the streets still in shadow. It captured something true about the city, about life itself. If only he could get his work in front of the right people. But gallery owners and art collectors moved in circles far removed from bike couriers with rain-soaked clothes. People like that woman, with the $20,000 bag. People who probably never even noticed someone like Andre unless he crashed into them. He shook his head, trying to dispel the thoughts. Self-pity wouldn't get him anywhere. Tomorrow would be another day of deliveries, another evening of painting. One day at a time. 3 days passed. The weather cleared, turning surprisingly warm for early fall. Andre's side still ached when he bent a certain way, but the pain was fading. He'd fixed his bike wheel, eating ramen for dinner to make up for the expense. Friday morning started like any other. Andre checked in at the courier office, got his first assignments, and headed out into the morning traffic. His second delivery took him to West Hill Tower, one of the tallest buildings downtown, home to several major companies. The package was addressed to the 47th floor. Andre locked his bike and entered the lobby, feeling immediately out of place, among the suits and polished shoes. The security guard gave him a once-over but let him through after checking his courier ID. The elevator rose smoothly, its digital display ticking through the floors. The 47th floor opened onto a reception area that screamed money and power. Glass walls looked out over the city, making it seem like you were floating above it all. The logo on the wall read, Wells Innovations, one of the biggest tech companies in the country. "I have a delivery," Andre told the receptionist, a young man with stylish glasses and a headset. "Name of recipient?" the man asked, not looking up from his screen. Andre checked the package. It just says CEO's office. The receptionist finally looked up, giving Andre a curious glance. "Wait here," he said, before picking up his phone and speaking quietly into it. Andre stood awkwardly by the desk, aware of his courier uniform among all this corporate luxury. A few minutes passed before the receptionist spoke again. "Someone will be down to get that," he said. "You can have a seat if you want." Andre chose to remain standing. He'd been sitting on his bike all morning, and, besides, the white couches looked too clean for his work clothes. 5 minutes later, a door opened and a woman emerged. Andre felt his stomach drop. It was her. The woman with the bag, the one he'd crashed into days ago. She was even more intimidating here, in her element, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, her short dark hair framing a face that now wore a slight smile. "Mr. Thomas," she said, "thank you for coming." Andre blinked in confusion. I'm just delivering this package." She nodded, taking the small envelope from his hands. "Yes, and now that you're here, there's something I'd like to discuss with you. Would you follow me, please?" Andre hesitated. Was this a trap? Was she going to demand payment for the bag after all? But curiosity won out, and he followed her through the door and down a hallway lined with what looked like original artwork. Real paintings, not prints. They entered a large corner office with windows on two sides, offering a breathtaking view of the city. Andre couldn't help but walk to the glass, looking out at the view of his city from this height. "It's something, isn't it?" the woman said, setting the package on her desk. "I never get tired of it." Andre nodded, turning back to face her. "Look, about your bag. I really am sorry. I know I can't afford to replace it, but maybe we could work something out. A payment plan or—" She waved a hand dismissively. "That's not why I asked you here." She gestured to a chair. "Please sit down. My name is Victoria Wells. I'm the CEO of Wells Innovations." Andre sat carefully on the edge of the chair, still confused. "Nice to meet you," he said automatically. "But I don't understand." Victoria Wells sat behind her desk, studying him with that same assessing look from days ago. "After our encounter, I was curious. I looked you up online." Andre stiffened. What could she possibly have found? His sparse social media presence? His nearly empty website with a few images of his paintings? "Your artwork," she continued, "is quite remarkable." Andre sat frozen in the plush chair, unsure if he'd heard Victoria Wells correctly. This powerful CEO had looked him up? Had seen his artwork? "I don't understand," he finally said. "How did you even find my work?" Victoria leaned back in her chair, the cityscape framing her through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "You underestimate the power of the internet, Mr. Thomas. Your courier ID badge has your full name. It wasn't difficult to find your website and social media profiles." Andre shifted uncomfortably. His website was basic at best, something he'd built himself using a free template. It showcased only a handful of his paintings, the ones he felt were good enough to share. His Instagram had more, but it barely had 100 followers. "So you looked me up because I damaged your bag?" he asked, still trying to make sense of this strange meeting. Victoria's lips curved into a slight smile. "I looked you up because I was curious. The accident with the bag was unfortunate but ultimately unimportant." Andre couldn't help but raise his eyebrows at that. "Unimportant? You said it cost $20,000. "It did. But it's just a bag." She stood up and walked to one of the paintings on her wall, a large abstract piece in vibrant blues and golds. "This, on the other hand, is priceless. Art speaks to something deeper than material value, don't you think?" Andre looked at the painting, recognizing it as the work of a well-known artist whose pieces sold for 6 figures. "I wouldn't know about that level of art," he said honestly. "I just paint what I feel. And that's exactly why I wanted to speak with you." Victoria turned back to face him. "Your Cityscape series, there's an authenticity to it, a perspective that feels fresh and honest. Your night scenes especially. They show a city most people in my position never really see." Andre felt a strange mix of pride and suspicion. Why would someone like her care about his art? "Thank you," he said cautiously. "But I still don't understand why I'm here." Victoria returned to her desk and pressed a button on her phone. "Nate, could you bring in the proposal package for Mr. Thomas, please?" She looked back at Andre. "Wells Innovations is expanding. We're taking over 3 more floors in this building, and I want the space to reflect our company's values. Innovation, fresh perspectives, and connection to the city where we started. I'd like to commission you to create a series of paintings for our new offices. Andre stared at her, certain he'd misheard. You want to commission me? For corporate artwork? Yes. 10 pieces, focusing on the city at different times of day. Your style would be perfect for what I have in mind. Her eyes held his. The commission fee would be substantial. The door opened, and a young man, Nate presumably, entered with a sleek folder, which he handed to Victoria before leaving silently. She opened it and pushed it across the desk to Andre. The details are all in here. Timeline, specifications, and compensation. Andre picked up the folder with slightly shaking hands and opened it. His eyes immediately went to the number at the bottom of the first page. The figure had so many zeros that for a moment he thought it must be a typo. This can't be right, he said, looking up at her. It's standard for a commission of this scale, Victoria replied calmly, plus a bonus if the work is completed ahead of schedule. Andre stared back at the number. It was more money than he'd made in the past 3 years combined. Enough to pay off his debts, buy decent art supplies, maybe even put a down payment on a small studio space instead of painting in his cramped apartment. Why me? He asked, finally voicing the question that was burning in his mind. There are thousands of artists in this city, artists with degrees and gallery representation. Why choose a bike courier you literally ran into on the street? Victoria's, expression softened slightly. Would you like the practical answer or the honest one? Both, I guess. Practically speaking, your work has exactly the aesthetic I'm looking for. Fresh, authentic, with a perspective that's missing from most corporate art. She paused. Honestly, I believe in giving opportunities to talent that might otherwise go unrecognized. The art world is notoriously difficult to break into without connections or privilege. Andre looked down at the proposal again, scanning the terms. The timeline was tight, 3 months to complete all 10 pieces, but it was doable if he reduced his courier hours. The contract seemed straightforward, with provisions for creative freedom within certain guidelines. I don't know what to say, he admitted. Say yes, Victoria suggested. But not right now. Take the proposal home, read it carefully. Think about it over the weekend. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the desk. Call me on Monday with your decision. Andre tucked the proposal under his arm and stood up, feeling slightly dazed. Thank you for this opportunity. It's unexpected. Victoria rose as well. Life often is, Mr. Thomas. Sometimes a collision can change your direction entirely. Her eyes held a hint of something, knowledge perhaps, or memory, that made Andre wonder if she was speaking from experience. As she walked him back to the reception area, Andre's mind raced with possibilities. This could be the break he'd been waiting for, the chance to focus on his art without the constant stress of making rent. But something still felt off, like there was more to this offer than Victoria was saying. One last thing, she said as they reached the elevators. The bag? Consider it forgotten. The elevator doors closed on her slight smile, leaving Andre to descend back to the ground floor, the proposal clutched in his hands like a lifeline. Back, on street level, the city seemed different somehow, the same buildings and people, but viewed through a new lens of possibility. Andre unlocked his bike mechanically, his mind elsewhere. The weight of the proposal in his courier bag felt both exciting and terrifying. He finished his remaining deliveries on autopilot, his thoughts constantly drifting back to Victoria Wells and her unexpected offer. By the time he clocked out at the courier office, the afternoon sun was casting long shadows between the buildings. You okay, man? Asked Darren, another courier who was finishing his shift. You look like you've seen a ghost. Andre managed to smile. I'm good. Just a weird day. Tell me about it. I had to deliver to that fancy law firm on 7th, and the guy made me wait 20 minutes while he finished a call. Like my time isn't worth anything. Darren locked his helmet in his locker. You doing anything tonight? A bunch of us are grabbing beers at Riley's. Thanks, but I've got some things to take care of, Andre replied. In truth, he couldn't wait to get home and really read through the proposal. to see if it was as good as it seemed at first glance. His apartment felt especially small that evening. The contrast between his current reality and the gleaming offices of Wells Innovations stark in his mind. Andre cleared a space at his tiny kitchen table, made a cup of coffee, and sat down to read every word of Victoria's proposal. The more he read, the more legitimate it seemed. The contract was clear about expectations: 10 paintings of varying sizes, all featuring the city, with specific color palettes suggested for different areas of the office, but creative freedom within those guidelines. The payment schedule was generous: a third up front, a third at the halfway point, and the final third upon completion, with the possibility of a bonus for early delivery. There was even a clause about rights. Andre would retain the copyright to all images, with Wells Innovations purchasing exclusive display rights. If they ever decided to reproduce the images for company materials, they'd pay additional licensing fees. It was, by any standard, an incredibly fair offer. Too fair, almost. Andre pushed back from the table and went to the window, looking out at the city as twilight settled over it. The buildings were beginning to light up, creating the patchwork of illumination he loved to paint. Why would Victoria Wells offer him this opportunity based on a chance encounter and a glimpse of his online portfolio? He took out his phone and searched for Victoria Wells CEO. The results were impressive: articles about her rise in the tech industry, profiles in business magazines, photos of her at charity events and speaking engagements. Wells Innovations had started as a small software company 10 years ago and had grown into a major player under her leadership. There was no mention of art collecting in any of the articles, though several noted that she had come from a modest background, the daughter of a high school teacher and a nurse, and had worked her way through college on scholarships and part-time jobs. Andre set down his phone, still uncertain. This opportunity could change everything for him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be a catch. People like Victoria Wells didn't just hand out chances like this without expecting something in return. He pulled out a sketch pad and began to draw, letting his hand move across the paper as he processed his thoughts. Without really planning to, he found himself sketching Victoria, her confident posture, the assessing look in her eyes, the slight curve of her lips that wasn't quite a smile. There was something compelling about her, a strength that came through, even in his rough sketch. The weekend passed in a blur of indecision. Andre alternated between excitement about the opportunity and suspicion about Victoria's motives. He called his parents on Sunday, sharing the news without going into detail about how he'd met Victoria. His mother was thrilled, his father cautiously optimistic. "Just make sure you read all the fine print, son," his father advised. "Opportunities like this don't come along often, but you need to protect yourself." "I have read it, Dad. Multiple times. It seems legitimate." "Then maybe it is," his father said. "Not everyone has an angle, you know." By Monday morning, Andre had made his decision. He called the number on Victoria's business card, half expecting to get an assistant or secretary. Victoria Wells. Her voice answered directly. "Ms. Wells, this is Andre Thomas, about the commission." "Yes?" There was a hint of amusement in her voice, as if she already knew what he was going to say. "I'd like to accept, but I have some questions about the timeline and the specific spaces where the paintings will hang." "Of course. Can you come to the office today? Say 2 o'clock? We can go over everything in detail." Andre agreed, and a few hours later he found himself back in the elevator of West Hill Tower, heading up to the 47th floor. This time he wasn't in his courier uniform, but dressed in the nicest clothes he owned: dark jeans and a button-down shirt that had only needed minimal ironing. Victoria met him at reception herself, dressed in a deep blue suit that somehow made her look both powerful and approachable. "Mr. Thomas, thank you for coming. Please call me Andre," he said, feeling slightly more at ease than during their first meeting. "Andre, then. And I'm Victoria." She led him not to her office but to a large conference room with a scale model of the building on a central table. "I thought it would be helpful for you to see the spaces where your work will be displayed." For the next hour, Victoria walked him through the expansion plans, showing him the key areas where his paintings would hang: the main reception area, conference rooms, a large employee lounge, and several key corridors. She explained the feel. She wanted for each space the way the art would help set the tone for employees and visitors alike. "I don't want generic corporate art," she explained. "I want something real, something that reminds everyone who works here that we're part of this city, not separate from it." As they talked, Andre found himself relaxing, his artist's mind already envisioning what he could create for each space. Victoria was knowledgeable about art and clear about what she wanted, but she also seemed genuinely interested in his ideas and perspective. "So," she said as they finished the tour, "do you have any other questions for me?" Andre hesitated, then decided to be direct. "Just one. Why did you really look me up after our accident? There has to be more to it than curiosity." Victoria didn't answer immediately. She walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "When we collided and you realized you'd damaged something expensive, I saw something in your face," she finally said. "Not just worry about the cost, but genuine regret about the damage itself. A respect for the object, regardless of its price tag." She turned back to face him. "That's rare. Most people would have just seen a rich woman's overpriced accessory." Andre thought back to that moment, the rain soaking them both, the torn leather of the bag. "It was beautiful," he admitted. "Even though I could never afford something like that, I could appreciate the craftsmanship." Victoria nodded. "Exactly. That's the same quality I see in your art, a genuine appreciation for beauty and detail, regardless of whether it's in a luxury item or a back alley at dawn." She smiled slightly. "And when I looked at your work, I knew my instinct was right." "So here we are." There was something in her explanation that rang true, a sincerity that cut through Andre's lingering doubts. Maybe this really was what it seemed, a fortunate accident that had led to an incredible opportunity. "I'm going to need to cut back my hours at the courier job," he said. "With your advance, I can afford to focus more on painting." "Good," Victoria said. "This is important work, Andre. I wouldn't have commissioned just anyone." As they walked back to the reception area, contract signed and advance payment being processed, Andre felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in years, he would be able to prioritize his art without the constant worry about making rent or buying supplies. "I won't let you down," he said as they shook hands. Victoria's grip was firm, her gaze direct. "I know you won't. I believe in backing talent. Andre, all some people need is a chance." As the elevator doors closed, taking him back down to street level, Andre couldn't help but feel that his life had just taken a sharp and unexpected turn. The city waited outside, the same as it had been that morning, but his place in it had somehow shifted. His phone buzzed with a notification. The first installment of the commission fee had been deposited in his account. Andre stared at the balance, a number higher than he'd ever seen in his bank account before. The real work was about to begin. The first week working on Victoria's commission passed in a blur for Andre. He reduced his courier shifts to 3 days a week, giving him 4 full days to paint. He'd converted his small living room into a proper studio space, buying a professional easel and better lighting with part of his advance. His kitchen table became a workspace for sketches and color studies, meals now eaten perched on the edge of his bed or standing at the counter. The deadline loomed in his mind. 10 paintings in 3 months meant completing 1 every 9 days on average. It was ambitious but not impossible, especially now that he had more time to focus. Today he was working on the largest piece, a panoramic view of the city at sunrise that would hang in the main reception area of Wells Innovations. Andre stood, back from the canvas, brush in hand, studying the way the light hit the buildings. Something wasn't quite right about the angle of the shadows. His phone buzzed with a text message. He wiped his hands on a rag before checking it, expecting it to be from the courier company, asking if he could pick up an extra shift. Instead, it was from Victoria. "Progress update available for a studio visit this afternoon?" Andre looked around his cramped apartment, paint tubes scattered across every surface, dirty dishes in the sink. It was hardly the professional studio space he imagined Victoria was used to visiting, but the painting was coming along well, and he was proud of what he'd accomplished so far. "Sure," he texted back, though my studio is just my apartment. 4 p.m.? Victoria's reply came quickly. Perfect. Send the address. Andre spent the next hour trying to make his apartment look less chaotic, putting away anything not related to the commission work. He stacked the sketches neatly, organized his paints, and even managed to wash the dishes. It still looked like what it was, a small apartment doubling as an art studio, but at least it was relatively tidy. At precisely 4 p.m., there was a knock at his door. Andre took a deep breath before opening it, suddenly nervous about having Victoria in his personal space. She stood in the hallway, dressed more casually than he'd seen her before in dark jeans and a simple blazer. Without the setting of her corporate office, she seemed more human somehow, though no less intimidating. "Thank you for agreeing to this visit," she said, stepping inside when he moved aside. "I like to see works in progress. It helps me understand the artist's process." Andre watched as Victoria surveyed his small apartment, taking in the canvases propped against walls, the sketches pinned up, the makeshift studio setup. If she was judging the modesty of his living situation, it didn't show on her face. "This is where the magic happens," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Victoria smiled slightly. "Creative spaces are always more interesting than corporate offices. Show me what you've been working on." Andre led her to the largest canvas, the sunrise piece he'd been struggling with all morning. "This is for the reception area. I'm still working on the light. Sunrise over the city creates these long shadows that stretch across the streets, but getting the angle right is tricky." Victoria studied the painting, her eyes moving methodically across the canvas. "The colors are beautiful," she said after a moment. "You've captured that moment when the light first hits the glass buildings, but hasn't yet reached the streets below." "That's exactly what I was going for," Andre said, surprised and pleased by her understanding. That moment of transition. For the next hour, Andre showed Victoria each of the works in progress, explaining his vision for each space they would occupy. She asked thoughtful questions and offered observations that showed a genuine appreciation for art. As they talked, Andre found himself relaxing, the nervousness giving way to the natural enthusiasm he felt when discussing his work. "You've made impressive progress," Victoria said as she examined the smallest painting, a nighttime view of the city's waterfront that would hang in one of the executive offices. "The timeline won't be a problem?" "I don't think so," Andre replied. "Now that I can focus more time on painting, I'm working faster than I expected. And having a deadline is actually helping. Sometimes when I paint just for myself, I can get stuck endlessly revising." Victoria nodded. "Constraints can be freeing sometimes. Speaking of which, would you be interested in seeing the spaces where these will hang? The renovation is still in progress, but it might help to see the actual locations." "I'd like that," Andre said. "The floor plans you provided are helpful, but seeing the real spaces would be better." "Good. How about tomorrow afternoon? The construction crew finishes at 4, so we could go at 5 when it's quiet." They set the time, and as Victoria prepared to leave, her gaze fell on a sketch pinned to the wall that wasn't related to the commission, a rough drawing of a woman's hands holding a torn leather bag. "You drew this after our first meeting," she said. It wasn't a question. Andre felt his face warm. "Yes, I sometimes sketch things that make an impression on me. The contrast of the delicate bag against your hands. It was visually interesting." Victoria studied the sketch for a moment longer. "You have a gift for capturing small details that others might miss," she said finally. "That's what makes your work special." After she left, Andre returned to the sunrise painting with renewed energy. Their conversation had clarified something in his mind about the light, and now he could see exactly what needed to be adjusted. He worked until late into the night, the city outside his window darkening as he painted its awakening on canvas. The next day, Andre met Victoria at West Hill Tower at 5 p.m. as planned. The regular office was still bustling with activity, but Victoria led him to the floors being renovated, which were eerily quiet after the construction crews had left for the day. "We're taking over floors 48 through 50, she explained as they stepped off the elevator into a space that was still raw and unfinished. "This will be the new main reception area. where your sunrise piece will hang. The space was vast, with windows, along two walls providing stunning views of the city. Construction dust covered the floors and wires hung from the ceiling where light fixtures would eventually be installed, but Andre could already imagine how it would look when completed. "The light in here is amazing," he said, walking to the windows. "The sunrise painting will work perfectly. The real light in the morning will complement the painted light." Victoria smiled. "That's exactly what I was thinking. The east-facing windows will catch the actual sunrise, creating a dialogue with your artwork." They continued through the floors, with Victoria explaining the purpose of each space and how Andre's paintings would fit into the overall design. It was fascinating to see how much thought she had put into every detail of the expansion. As they reached what would become a large conference room on the 50th floor, Victoria paused. "This area has special meaning for me," she said. "It's where I'll be announcing our new education initiative, a program to provide technology training and internships for young people from underserved communities." Andre looked around the half-finished space, trying to imagine it filled with people. "That sounds like an important program." "It is," Victoria said, her voice taking on a passion that Andre hadn't heard before. "Access to education and opportunity. Change my life. I want to create those same pathways for others." Something in her tone made Andre look at her more closely. "You didn't always have it easy, did you?" Victoria met his gaze steadily. "No, I didn't start out with advantages. I grew up in a neighborhood not unlike yours, worked my way through college on scholarships and part-time jobs, built this company from nothing." She gestured around them. "All of this came later." Andre was surprised by her candor. In his mind, CEOs were born into privilege, their paths smooth and straight. The idea that Victoria had struggled, had built her success from the ground up, changed how he saw her. "Is that why you're giving me this chance?" he asked. "Because someone gave you a chance once?" Victoria considered his question. "Partly, but don't mistake this for charity, Andre. I commissioned you because your work is exactly what these spaces need. Your talent is real, but talent without opportunity stays hidden." As they continued the tour, Andre found himself seeing Victoria in a new light. She wasn't just a wealthy CEO who could casually spend $20,000 on a handbag. She was someone who had fought for her place in the world, just as he was fighting for his. "The painting for this conference room," Andre said as they were preparing to leave. "I think I want to change my approach. After seeing the space and hearing about the education program, I have a different vision for it." "Tell me," Victoria said, interested. "Instead of the afternoon cityscape I planned, I'm thinking of a dawn scene, but from a different perspective. Looking up from street level, showing the tops of the buildings catching the first light. It would symbolize aspiration, the way your education program is about helping people rise." Victoria's expression softened. "I trust your vision, Andre. If that's what you feel is right for the space, then that's what you should create." They rode the elevator down together, discussing the timeline for the renovation and when the paintings would need to be installed. As they reached the lobby, Victoria checked her watch. "I have a dinner meeting," she said, "but before I go, would you be interested in attending a gallery opening next Thursday? The artist is a friend of mine, and his work has some similarities to yours. It might be helpful for you to see how he approaches urban landscapes." Andre hesitated. Art openings meant networking, meeting people in the art world, something he'd had little opportunity to do. The idea was both exciting and intimidating. "I'd like that," he said finally. "Thank you for the invitation." "Good. I'll send you the details." Victoria shook his hand firmly. "Keep up the excellent work, Andre. I'm impressed with what you've accomplished so far." As Andre walked to the subway station, his mind was busy with new ideas for the paintings, inspired by seeing the actual spaces and learning more about Victoria's background. The connection between artist and patron had deepened, becoming something more complex than a simple business arrangement. The gallery opening the following Thursday was in a trendy area of the city that Andre rarely visited. He arrived a few minutes early, dressed in his best clothes, feeling nervous but determined to make the most of the opportunity. The gallery was already crowded when he stepped inside, filled with well-dressed people holding wine glasses and discussing the artwork that covered the walls. Andre moved slowly through the space, studying the paintings, urban scenes rendered in bold strokes and vibrant colors, capturing the energy of city life in a way that resonated with his own approach but with a different technique. "What do you think?" Victoria's voice came from behind him. Andre turned to find her holding 2 glasses of wine, offering one to him. "His use of color is amazing," he said, accepting the glass. "The way he captures movement within the static image. I've been trying to achieve something similar in my own work." Victoria nodded. "I thought you might appreciate his technique. Come, I'll introduce you." She led him through the crowd to a tall man surrounded by admirers. "Daniel," she called, and the man looked up, breaking into a smile when he saw Victoria. "Victoria, you made it." He stepped away from the group to embrace her warmly. "I wouldn't miss it," she replied. "Daniel, I'd like you to meet Andre Thomas, an extraordinary artist I've recently commissioned for our office expansion. Andre, this is Daniel Chen, one of the most innovative urban landscape artists working today." Daniel extended his hand to Andre. "Any artist Victoria champions is worth knowing. Tell me about your work." For the next 20 minutes, Andre found himself engaged in the most stimulating conversation about art he'd had in years. Daniel was generous with his knowledge, asking thoughtful questions about Andre's techniques and sharing insights about his own process. "You should show at Westside Gallery," Daniel said as their conversation wound down. "Their focus is emerging artists with fresh perspectives on urban life. I know the owner. I could introduce you." Andre glanced at Victoria, who was watching their interaction with evident satisfaction. "That would be incredible," he told Daniel. "Thank you." As the evening progressed, Victoria introduced Andre to several other people in the art world, gallery owners, collectors, and fellow artists. Each conversation opened new possibilities, new connections that could help advance his career beyond the Wells Innovations Commission. "You didn't tell me this was a networking opportunity," Andre said to Victoria during a quiet moment when they found themselves alone near a window overlooking the street. "Would you have come if I had?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Andre considered. Probably not. I would have been too nervous." "Exactly. You belong in these circles, Andre. Your work deserves to be seen by these people." She sipped her wine. "Think of it as another kind of commission. I'm investing in your future as an artist." "Why?" Andre asked, the question that had been lingering in his mind since their first meeting finally breaking free. "Why me? There has to be more to it than just liking my paintings." Victoria was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city lights. "When I was starting out," she finally said, "building my company from nothing, someone took a chance on me. An investor who saw potential where others didn't. He funded my first major project when every bank had turned me down." She turned back to Andre. "That investment changed everything for me. Sometimes all it takes is one person who believes in what you're doing." "So you're paying it forward," Andre said, understanding dawning. "In a way. But as I said before, this isn't charity. Your talent is real, Andre. I'm just opening a few doors. You're the one who will walk through them." As they parted ways later that evening, Andre, with a pocket full of business cards and a head spinning with new possibilities, he felt a profound shift in how he saw himself and his art. For years he'd been painting in isolation, dreaming of a break that seemed impossibly distant. Now suddenly paths were opening before him. Paths that led to galleries, to collectors, to a life where his art could be his primary focus. The torn bag that had brought them together now seemed like a strange kind of fate, a random collision that had set larger forces in motion. Back in his apartment that night, Andre looked at his works in progress with fresh eyes. The commission pieces were coming along well, but now they represented something more than just a job. They were the beginning of what could be a real career as an artist. He picked up his brush and began to work on the new dawn painting for the conference room, the one inspired by Victoria's education initiative. As he painted, he thought about her journey from a background not unlike his own to the heights of corporate success. It gave the image of light breaking over the city a new meaning, a deeper resonance. In the weeks that followed, Andre's life fell into a new rhythm, painting during the day, occasionally meeting with Victoria to discuss progress, and increasingly attending art events in the evenings where he was introduced to more people in the industry. Daniel Chen had made good on his promise, introducing Andre to the owner of Westside Gallery, who had expressed interest in seeing his portfolio once the Wells Commission was complete. The commission itself was advancing ahead of schedule. 8 of the 10 paintings were now finished, each one better than the last as Andre's confidence grew. The final 2, including the special dawn painting for the conference room, were well underway. One afternoon, as Andre was adding final touches to the 9th painting, his phone rang. It was Victoria. "Andre, how would you feel about presenting your work to the executive team next week? The renovation is nearly complete, and I'd like them to meet the artist before the installation." Andre's immediate instinct was to panic at the thought of presenting to a room full of executives, but something had changed in him over the past weeks, a growing belief in himself and his work that Victoria had helped nurture. "I'd be honored," he said, surprising himself with his confidence. "Just tell me when and where." "Thursday at 2 p.m., in the completed conference room on the 50th floor. And Andre, bring the dawn painting if it's ready. I'd like them to see it in the space it was created for." Thursday arrived, and Andre found himself in the elevator of West Hill Tower once again, this time with his newest painting carefully wrapped and protected. The conference room, which had been a construction zone when he last saw it, was now complete, sleek and modern, with the stunning city view serving as a natural backdrop. Victoria met him at the elevator, helping him carry the painting. "The team is excited to meet you," she said as they walked. "I've been showing them photos of your work in progress and they're impressed." "No pressure then," Andre said with a nervous laugh. Victoria stopped, turning to face him. "You've earned this moment, Andre. Your work speaks for itself, just let it do the talking." The executive team filed in a few minutes later, 10 men and women in business attire, all looking curiously at Andre and the wrapped painting leaning against the wall. Victoria made the introductions, describing how she had commissioned Andre for the office expansion project. "I believe art in a workspace should be more than decoration," she told the group. "It should reflect the company's connection to the community around us, remind us of the city we're part of. Andre's work does exactly that." She nodded to Andre, who took a deep breath before unwrapping the painting. There was a collective murmur of appreciation as the artwork was revealed, a stunning depiction of dawn breaking over the city, viewed from street level looking up, the tops of buildings catching the golden light while figures on the street below began their day, faces turned upward toward the promise of morning. "This piece," Andre said, finding his voice, "was inspired by the education initiative that Wells Innovations is launching. It represents aspiration, the journey upward, the way opportunity can change lives." He glanced at Victoria. "Like it, changed mine." The presentation continued, with Andre explaining his approach to each of the commissioned pieces and how they connected to different aspects of the company's identity and mission. The executives asked thoughtful questions, showing genuine interest in both the artwork and Andre's journey as an artist. Afterward, as the team filed out, several stopped to shake Andre's hand and compliment his work. The last to leave was an older man who Victoria had introduced as the chairman of the board. "You've got a remarkable eye, young man," he told Andre. Victoria has always had a talent for spotting potential, whether in business or in art. When they were alone, Victoria turned to Andre with a smile. "That went even better than I expected. They loved your work, especially the dawn painting." Andre felt a wave of relief and pride wash over him. "Thank you for believing in me," he said simply. "You did the work," Victoria replied. "All I did was provide the opportunity." As they carefully hung the painting on the conference room wall, positioning it precisely where it would catch the natural light, Andre thought about how much had changed since that rainy morning when he'd accidentally damaged Victoria's expensive Egg. His life had been redirected by that random collision, set on a new course that he was only beginning to navigate. It looks perfect there, Victoria said, stepping back to admire the painting in its intended space. Exactly as I imagined it would. Andre stood beside her, seeing his work through her eyes. Not just a painting, but a symbol of possibility, of paths opening, of light breaking over new horizons. Yes, he agreed. It does. The gallery was filled with people dressed in clothes that cost more than Andre's monthly rent. Soft jazz played in the background as waiters circulated with trays of champagne and tiny appetizers. This was nothing like the small community art shows Andre had participated in before. This was West Side Gallery, one of the most prestigious spaces in the city for emerging artists. And tonight, it was showing his work. 3 months had passed since Andre had completed the Wells Innovations Commission. In that time, his life had transformed in ways he still couldn't quite believe. The exhibition, titled City Rhythms, featured 15 of his paintings, a mix of new work and selected pieces from the Wells Commission that Victoria had agreed could be displayed publicly before their installation. Andre stood near the entrance, watching as people moved from painting to painting, their expressions thoughtful as they studied his work. He wore a new suit, his first tailored one, feeling both proud and slightly out of place, like he was playing a role he hadn't quite grown into yet. "There he is," a voice called, and Andre turned to see Daniel Chen approaching, accompanied by a woman with short silver hair and sharp eyes. The man of the hour. Andre smiled, grateful for the friendly face. "Daniel, thank you for coming." "I wouldn't miss it," Daniel replied, clapping him on the shoulder. "This is Rita Maddox, art critic for the City Journal." Andre tried not to look intimidated as he shook the woman's hand. Rita Maddox was known for her brutally honest reviews that could make or break an emerging artist's career. "Your work has an unusual authenticity," she told him, her gaze direct. "Particularly the night scenes. They show parts of the city most gallery patrons never see." "Thank you," Andre said, unsure if this was praise or criticism. "I paint what I know." Rita nodded. "That's evident. Too many artists try to capture experiences they've never had. Your perspective is refreshingly genuine." She handed him a business card. "I'd like to interview you for a feature. Call my office." "Next week?" As she moved away to examine one of his larger pieces, Daniel grinned at Andre. "That's a good sign. Rita doesn't waste time on artists she doesn't find interesting." Andre slipped the card into his pocket, still processing what had just happened. A feature in the City Journal could bring his work to an entirely new audience. "Have you seen Victoria yet?" Daniel asked, glancing around the gallery. "Not yet, but she said she'd be here." As if summoned by her name, Victoria appeared at the gallery entrance. She wore a simple black dress, her only adornment a striking silver necklace. Even in this crowd of wealthy art patrons, she commanded attention. Their eyes met across the room, and Victoria smiled, making her way toward him. "Andre, the exhibition looks wonderful." "Thank you for coming," he said, "and for everything else. I wouldn't be here without you." Victoria waved away his gratitude. "This is your achievement. You did the work." "Still, He was interrupted by the gallery owner, Elaine, tapping a glass for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming tonight to the opening of City Rhythms by Andre Thomas. We are incredibly proud to present this extraordinary new talent." Andre felt his face warm as all eyes turned to him. "I'd like to invite Andre to say a few words," Elaine continued, gesturing for him to join her. Victoria gave him an encouraging nod as he made his way to the front of the gallery. Standing before the crowd, Andre took a deep breath, fighting the urge to retreat. These people had come to see his art, to hear what he had to say. It was time to step fully into this new role. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. 6 months ago, I was delivering packages on my bike and painting in my tiny apartment whenever I could find the time. Art was my passion, but not my living." He paused, looking around at his paintings hanging on the pristine white walls. "Then, one rainy morning, I had an accident. I collided with someone." His eyes found Victoria in the crowd, "and damaged something valuable." That collision could have been just another bad day. Instead, it changed the direction of my life. Andre gestured to the paintings surrounding them. These works are about the city we all share, seen from different angles and different lights. Some views are from above, looking down on the streets below. Others look up from street level, seeing only glimpses of the sky between buildings, because perspective matters. Where you stand determines what you see. He took another breath, surprised at how steady his voice sounded. I'm grateful to everyone who helped make this exhibition possible, especially Victoria Wells, who saw something in my work that I wasn't sure was there. Sometimes all it takes is one person who believes in you, who gives you the chance to prove what you can do. The crowd applauded as Andre stepped back, relieved to have gotten through the speech without stumbling. As people returned to viewing the artwork, several approached to introduce themselves. Collectors, other gallery owners, even a museum curator interested in including one of his pieces in an upcoming exhibition on urban landscapes. Andre tried to focus on each conversation, to be present in this moment he had dreamed of for so long, but part of him still couldn't quite believe it was real. Later, as the crowd thinned and the evening wound down, Andre found himself standing with Victoria before his favorite painting in the show, a twilight scene of the waterfront, the transitional moment when artificial lights begin to compete with the fading natural light. How does it feel? Victoria asked, studying the painting rather than looking at him. To see your work like this, to hear what people are saying about it? Andre considered the question. Surreal. Like I'm watching it happen to someone else. He paused. But also right somehow. Like this is where I was always supposed to end. Up. Even when it seemed impossible. Victoria nodded. I know that feeling. Success has a way of becoming normal faster than you'd expect. Soon you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. I hope I never take it for granted, Andre said. Any of it. They were quiet for a moment, both contemplating the painting. There's something I've wanted to ask you, Andre finally said. That first day when I damaged your bag, you could have been angry. You could have demanded payment or reported me to the courier company. Why didn't you? Victoria turned to face him. Because I recognized something in that moment. Not just talent, but character. The way you reacted with genuine regret rather than fear or defensiveness. It reminded me of someone. Who? A slight smile touched her lips. Myself, years ago. Before all this. She gestured vaguely, encompassing not just the gallery but the world of wealth and power she now inhabited. I made mistakes too, broke things I couldn't afford to replace. But someone saw past those mistakes to my potential. She looked back at the painting. The bag wasn't important. What I saw in you was. Before Andre could respond, Elaine approached them excitedly. Andre, I have wonderful news. We've sold 11 of the 15 pieces, including this one. And there's serious interest in the remaining 4. Andre stared at her, stunned. 11? Already? Yes. And at the full asking price. No negotiations. Elaine beamed. This is one of our most successful openings for a new artist in years. As she walked away to speak with the last remaining patrons, Andre turned back to Victoria, overwhelmed. I can't believe it. That's more money than I've made in the past 2 years combined. You'll need to get used to it, Victoria said, a hint of amusement in her voice. This is just the beginning. Once the City Journal feature comes out, the demand for your work will increase significantly. How do you know about the feature? Rita just mentioned it to me tonight. Victoria raised an eyebrow. The art world is smaller than you might think. Rita and I serve on the board of the City Arts Foundation together. Andre shook his head, laughing softly. Of course you do. As they prepared to leave, Elaine handed Andre a thick envelope. Your portion of tonight's sales. We'll wire the rest once the remaining pieces sell, which I expect will happen within the week. Andre thanked her, tucking the envelope into his jacket pocket. The weight of it against his chest felt significant, tangible proof that his life had irrevocably changed. Outside, the night air was cool and clear. The street was quiet, most of the gallery patrons having already departed in taxis or private cars. Andre and Victoria stood on the sidewalk. An unexpected moment of stillness. After the whirlwind of the evening, "Can I offer you a ride home?" Victoria asked, gesturing to her car waiting at the curb, the same sleek black vehicle that had been part of their first encounter. Andre shook his head. "Thank you, but I think I'll walk for a bit. I need to clear my head." Victoria nodded, understanding, in her eyes. It's a lot to process. Success can be as disorienting as failure in its way. "I'm starting to realize that." She held out her hand. "Congratulations, Andre. You earned this." As they shook hands, Andre felt a strange mix of emotions: gratitude, pride, and an unexpected melancholy. Victoria had been more than a patron. She'd become a mentor, even a friend of sorts. Now that the commission was complete, and his career was launched, would their paths continue to cross, or would she move on to champion another unknown talent? "Will I see you at the Wells installation next week?" he asked. "Of course. It's the culmination of our project together." She studied his face. "This isn't an ending, Andre. It's a transition." As if reading his thoughts, she added, "The Wells board is impressed with your work. There's talk of commissioning you for our offices in other cities if you're interested." Relief flooded through him. "I'd like that." Victoria smiled. "Good. We'll discuss it after the installation." She turned toward her car, then paused. "Enjoy your walk. Sometimes we need space to absorb the moments that change our lives." After she left, Andre began walking, no particular destination in mind. The city at night had always been his favorite subject to paint. The interplay of darkness and artificial light. The way familiar places transformed after sunset. Now he moved through those streets as a different person than he'd been 6 months ago. The envelope in his pocket represented more than money. It was validation, opportunity, freedom. He could afford a real studio now, better materials, perhaps, even an assistant. He could quit the courier job entirely and focus solely on his art. Yet as he walked, Andre found himself thinking not of future success, but of the journey that had brought him here. The years of painting in his apartment after long days of deliveries, the rejections from small galleries, the encouragement of his parents even when they worried about his financial stability, and the random accident that had connected him with Victoria, altering his trajectory in ways he never could have imagined. His phone buzzed with a text. It was from Darren, his friend from the courier company, who had attended the opening. "Congrats again, man. So proud of you. Don't forget us." "Little people when you're famous," Andre smiled, typing back. "Never. Drinks next week, my treat." He put his phone away and continued walking, eventually finding himself near the waterfront he'd painted so many times. The city lights reflected in the dark water, creating patterns of gold and silver against the black surface. Andre stood at the railing, looking out at the harbor and beyond to the bridges connecting different parts of the city. Connections. That's what had changed everything for him. Victoria had connected him to opportunities he couldn't have accessed on his own, opening doors that had seemed permanently closed. But it wasn't just about Victoria's influence or the lucky accident that had brought them together. Andre had been ready for the opportunity when it came. His years of practicing his craft, of seeing and capturing the city in ways others missed, that was what Victoria had recognized in his work. The collision had created an opening, but he had walked through it himself. A week later, Andre stood in the completed reception area of Wells Innovations, watching as his largest painting, the sunrise piece that had been the centerpiece of the commission, was carefully mounted on the wall. The installation team worked with precision, ensuring the lighting was perfect, the positioning exact. Victoria stood beside him, overseeing the process. "It's even more impressive in this space than I imagined," she said. "The way the light from the windows interacts with the painted light, it's exactly the effect I was hoping for." Andre nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction at seeing his work in its intended setting. The painting looked as if it had been created specifically for this wall, this room, this moment, which in fact it had been. The installation of all 10 paintings took most of the day. Each piece was placed in its designated location throughout the 3 newly renovated floors, creating a cohesive journey through the building. When the final painting was hung, the dawn scene in the conference room, Victoria gathered the installation. "Team for a toast. To art that transforms spaces," she said, raising her glass, "and to the artist who created it." Later, after the team had departed, Victoria and Andre did a final walkthrough of all 3 floors, checking each painting in its setting. They ended back at the reception area, coming full circle to the sunrise piece where they had begun. "I have something for you," Victoria said, reaching into her bag. A new one, Andre noticed, not the torn Kaizen he had damaged months ago. She handed him a small, wrapped package. Andre opened it carefully. Inside was a book, an elegant volume with "City Rhythms, the Art of Andre Thomas" embossed on the cover. He opened it to find high-quality reproductions of all 10 commission paintings, along with several of his other works, interspersed with critical essays about his art. "How?" he began, flipping through the pages in amazement. "I had it privately. Published," Victoria explained. "Only 50 copies exist. 1 for each member of the Wells executive team, a few for special clients, and this one for you. Consider it a thank you for your extraordinary work on this project." Andre ran his fingers over the glossy pages, seeing his art presented with a level of respect and professionalism he had never imagined. "This is incredible, thank you." "There's something else," Victoria said. "Something I've been considering since your gallery opening." Andre looked up from the book, curious. "Wells Innovations is establishing an artist-in-residence program." She continued. "A year-long position with studio space, a stipend, and the freedom to create without financial pressure. The resident would also mentor young artists from our education program, sharing their knowledge and experience." Andre's breath caught. "That sounds amazing. We'd like you to be our first resident artist." He stared at her, processing the offer. A year of financial security, a proper studio, the chance to focus entirely on his art while also helping young people develop their own talents. It was an opportunity beyond anything he could have hoped for. "Why me?" he asked, echoing the question he'd asked months ago when she first offered him the commission. "You've launched my career already. There are other artists who need this kind of opportunity more than I do now." Victoria's expression softened. "Because the program needs to start with someone who understands both struggle and success, someone who can show these young people that the path isn't easy, but it is possible." She gestured to the sunrise painting. "You see the light breaking over the city because you've spent time in the shadows. That perspective is valuable, Andre. It's what makes your art powerful, and it's what will make you an excellent mentor." Andre looked at the book in his hands, then at the painting on the wall, tangible evidence of how far he had come. The residency would be another step forward, another door opening onto possibilities he was only beginning to imagine. "I'd be honored," he said. Victoria smiled. "I hoped you'd say that. We'll announce the program next month after your City Journal feature is published." As they stood together looking at the sunrise painting, Andre thought about the strange journey that had brought him here, from a rain-soaked collision on a downtown street to this moment of achievement and promise. A torn handbag worth $20,000 had somehow led to opportunities worth infinitely more. "Sometimes accidents turn out to be the best things that happen to us," he said, almost to himself. Victoria nodded. "It's not the collision that matters in the end. It's what we build from it." Outside the windows of Wells Tower, the real sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city they both loved. A city Andre had captured in paint, transforming ordinary streets and buildings into something more profound. As darkness fell, the lights began to appear one by one, creating new patterns against the gathering night. It was the transitional moment Andre loved most. Not quite day, not quite night, but something in between. A moment of possibility, of paths diverging, of lives changing direction. A moment like the one he'd experienced months ago in the rain, when a random accident had altered the course of his life forever. "What happens next?" he asked, looking out at the city below. Victoria followed his gaze. "That's the beautiful part," she said. "You get to decide. 1 year had passed since Andre had accepted the position as Wells Innovation's first artist in residence. The studio space provided by the company had become his second home, a sun-filled loft on the 51st floor with views that still took his breath away, even after all these months. Today, the space was busier than usual. 6 young artists, all participants in the Wells Education Initiative, were scattered throughout the studio, each working on their own projects. Andre moved among them, offering guidance, encouragement, and occasional technical advice. "How's it coming along, Tori?" he asked, stopping beside a teenage girl working on a bold abstract piece in shades of purple and gold. She looked up, brush in hand, her face serious. "I'm not sure about this section." She pointed to the lower corner of her canvas. "It feels disconnected from the rest." Andre studied the painting, noting the sharp contrast between the flowing lines in the main composition and the more angular shapes in the corner she'd indicated. "What if you introduced some of these curved elements here?" he suggested, sketching quickly on a scrap paper, creating a visual bridge between the two areas. Tori considered this, her expression thoughtful. "Yeah, that could work, thanks, Mr. Thomas. Just Andre," he reminded her with a smile. "We're fellow artists here." He continued his circuit of the studio, spending time with each student. These moments were among his favorite parts of the residency, watching young talents develop, seeing their confidence grow as they discovered their own unique voices. At noon, Victoria arrived for her monthly visit to the program. She entered quietly, observing the busy studio without immediately announcing her presence. Andre spotted her by the door and made his way over. "They're making amazing progress," Victoria said, gesturing toward the students. "Especially Tori. Her work has evolved dramatically in just a few months." Andre nodded. "She has a natural eye for composition. With the right opportunities, she could go far." "That's why this program exists," Victoria replied. "To provide those opportunities." She turned to him. "Do you have a moment to talk privately? There's something I'd like to discuss before the exhibition preparations begin." They stepped into the small office adjoining the studio. Through the glass wall, they could still see the students working, but their conversation wouldn't be overheard. "The board met yesterday," Victoria began. "We reviewed the first year of the residency program and unanimously agreed it's been even more successful than we'd hoped." Andre felt a warmth spread through him. The past year had been transformative, not just for his career, but for his understanding of himself as an artist and a mentor. "That's good to hear. We'd like to extend it," Victoria continued. "Make it a permanent fixture of Wells Innovation's community engagement efforts. But with some changes." "What kind of changes?" Andre asked, curious. "We want to expand the program to include 2 residents each year, working in different media. A painter and a sculptor, perhaps, or a photographer, creating a more diverse artistic community." Andre nodded. It was a logical evolution. "That sounds excellent. The students would benefit from exposure to different artistic approaches." "We'd like you to stay on," Victoria said. "Not as a resident, but as the program director. You would select the new residents, oversee the curriculum for the students, and continue your own work in the studio. It would be a permanent position." Andre hadn't expected this. The residency had always been presented as a 1-year opportunity, after which he would move on and another artist would take his place. The idea of staying, of building something lasting from the foundation they'd established, was appealing in ways he hadn't anticipated. "I'm honored," he said, "but I want to make sure I understand what you're offering. Would I still have time? For my own work? For gallery shows?" "Absolutely," Victoria assured him. "We value your art as much as your mentorship. The position would include 4 months each year dedicated solely to your personal projects. During those months, the other resident would take the lead with the students." Andre considered the proposal. His career had flourished over the past year. The City Journal feature had led to more press coverage, gallery representation in 3 cities, and a waiting list for his paintings. But he'd also discovered a deep satisfaction in teaching, in helping younger artists navigate the challenges he'd faced himself. "I'd like to accept," he said. On one condition. Victoria raised an eyebrow, waiting. I want Tori to be the first student to receive a full college scholarship from the program. She has extraordinary potential, but her family can't afford art school. Victoria smiled. Already in the works. The board approved scholarships for 3 students next year, and Tori's name is at the top of the list. They returned to the main studio, where the students were beginning to clean up for their lunch break. Watching them, these young people whose lives were being changed by access to resources and mentorship he'd lacked at their age, Andre felt a profound sense of purpose. This too had come from that rainy day collision. Not just his own success, but the chance to open doors for others. Later that afternoon, after the students had left, Andre remained in the studio, working on a new series of paintings for an upcoming solo exhibition. These pieces were different from his earlier work, still focused on the city, but now exploring the intersections between public and private spaces, the visible and invisible connections that bound the urban landscape together. His phone buzzed, with a message from Victoria. Don't forget, 6 p.m. Community Arts Center opening. Car will pick you up at 5:30. Andre smiled, setting down his brush. Tonight was the grand opening of the Community Arts Center, a project that had consumed much of his free time over the past 6 months. Located in the neighborhood where he'd grown up, the center would provide free art classes, studio space, and exhibition opportunities for local residents. He cleaned his brushes and changed into the suit he kept hanging in the studio closet for such occasions. As promised, a car was waiting when he exited Wells Tower at 5:30. The drive took him away from the gleaming skyscrapers of downtown, through increasingly familiar streets, until they reached the renovated building that now housed the Community Arts Center. A small crowd had already gathered outside, neighborhood residents, city officials, representatives from various arts organizations, and the press. Andre spotted his parents near the entrance, both beaming with pride. They had supported his artistic dreams even when the path seemed impossible, and seeing their faces now as he prepared to open a center in their community filled him with emotion. There he is, his father called as Andre approached. The man of the hour. His mother embraced him tightly. We are so proud of you, honey, so proud. Andre hugged them both. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You know that, right? His father nodded, eyes suspiciously bright. You did the work, son. We just believed in you. Sometimes that's the most important part, Andre replied, thinking of Victoria and how her belief had changed everything. Speaking of Victoria, he spotted her arriving, dressed elegantly but not ostentatiously appropriate for an event in this neighborhood. She was accompanied by several Wells Innovations executives who had contributed to the center's funding. Should we go inside? Andre asked his parents. I need to check that everything's ready before people start coming in. The interior of the building had been transformed from an abandoned community center into a vibrant art space. The main floor featured a gallery area, currently displaying work by local artists alongside pieces created by students from the Wells Education Initiative. The second floor housed classrooms and studio spaces, while the basement had been converted into a darkroom and printmaking workshop. Andre walked through the space, making last-minute adjustments to the lighting and display labels. This project represented a different kind of achievement than his gallery shows or the Wells Commission. It was his way of creating the opportunity for others that Victoria had provided for him. At 6 p.m. sharp, the doors opened to the public. Andre stood at the entrance, greeting people as they arrived. The mayor made an appearance, as did several prominent figures from the city's arts community. But the guests who meant the most to Andre were the neighborhood residents, families, with children, elderly couples, teenagers who reminded him of himself at that age. At 6:30, it was time for the official opening remarks. Andre took his place at the small podium set up in the main gallery space, looking out at the diverse crowd that had gathered. Thank you all for coming tonight, he began. This center represents something I dreamed about long before I had the means to make it happen. A place where art is accessible to everyone regardless of background or circumstance. He gestured to the artwork surrounding them. Creativity doesn't belong only in expensive galleries or corporate headquarters. It belongs everywhere, in every neighborhood, in every life. The talent is already here. He nodded toward the local artists whose work was displayed. What's been missing are the resources, the space, the opportunity to develop that talent. Andre paused, finding Victoria in the crowd. A year and a half ago, my life changed because someone saw potential in me that others had missed. That single opportunity created a ripple effect that led to this moment, to this center. And my hope is that this place will create its own ripples, its own opportunities that extend far beyond these walls. After the speeches, people moved throughout the building, admiring the artwork, exploring the facilities, and engaging in conversations about the center's programs. Andre circulated among the guests, answering questions and accepting congratulations. But his attention was repeatedly drawn to the younger visitors, the children and teenagers examining the art with curious eyes, testing out the materials in the demonstration areas, imagining themselves as creators. Later in the evening, he found Victoria standing before a painting in the student exhibition section, a cityscape by Tori that showed remarkable progress from her earlier work. She has a unique perspective, Victoria observed. I see echoes of your influence, but she's developing her own distinct voice. Andre nodded. That's the goal of good teaching, isn't it? To guide without imposing, to help students find their own path. You've become an excellent teacher, Victoria said. And this center, she gestured around them, it's exactly what this community needed. I had a good example to follow, Andre replied. Your education initiative at Wells showed me what was possible when resources meet opportunity. Victoria smiled. Speaking of which, I brought something for the center. She beckoned to one of her assistants who carried a carefully wrapped package. A housewarming gift of sorts. Andre accepted the package, curious. Carefully removing the protective covering, he found himself looking at a familiar object. The torn Kaizen bag from their first encounter but transformed. The tear had been repaired with gold thread in the Japanese kintsugi tradition, and the bag itself had been mounted in a shadow box frame with a small plaque that read, Sometimes our most valuable collisions lead to unexpected beauty. I had it restored, Victoria explained, but asked the artisan to make the repair visible rather than invisible. The gold seam highlights the damage rather than hiding it. Andre stared at the transformed bag, moved by the symbolism. It's perfect. For the center, a reminder that setbacks can become turning points. As they hung the framed bag in a prominent spot near the entrance, Andre reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a struggling bike courier to an established artist with gallery representation, from a chance encounter in the rain to a friendship that had opened doors he hadn't known existed. The center was filling with laughter and conversation, people from different walks of life connected through a shared appreciation of art. Andre's parents were chatting with the mayor. Tori was earnestly explaining her painting technique to an interested collector. Former colleagues from the courier company were examining a series of photographs, showing the neighborhood's evolution over decades. What's next for you? Victoria asked as they stepped back to observe the successful event. After the center is established and your exhibition next month? Andre considered the question. His life had expanded in ways he could never have predicted, offering possibilities that once seemed unimaginable. I'm working on a new series, he said, exploring how people navigate transitions from one place to another, one life circumstance to another. The moments when everything changes. Victoria nodded. Like a collision on a rainy street? Exactly like that. Andre agreed with a smile. Though I'm painting the aftermath more than the collision itself. The new directions, the unexpected connections, the way random events reshape our paths. As the evening continued, Andre found himself standing at the center's entrance, watching as people arrived and departed, creating a constant flow of movement and energy. The building that had once stood empty was now alive with possibility, just as his own life had been transformed by a single moment of chance and recognition. The torn bag, now a work of art itself, caught the light from its place on the wall, the golden repair gleaming like a reminder that some breaks create openings for something new to enter, something that might never have existed otherwise. Outside, the city continued its rhythm. Lights changing, people moving through streets and buildings, countless lives intersecting in ways both meaningful and mundane. Andre had captured that rhythm in his paintings, finding beauty in both the grand vistas and the overlooked corners. Now he was helping others see their own city, their own lives, through the transformative lens of art. The reception was winding down, most guests having departed. Andre's parents had gone home proud and happy. The catering staff was quietly cleaning up. Victoria approached, putting on her coat. "I should go," she said. "Early meeting tomorrow. But Andre, this place is extraordinary. What you've created here matters." "What we created," he corrected her. "This center exists because of a chain of events that started with our collision." Victoria smiled. The collision was random. What we built from it wasn't. As they walked, outside, the night air was cool and clear. The street looked different than it had a year ago, the building now illuminated and purposeful rather than dark and abandoned. A new energy flowing into a neighborhood that had been overlooked for too long. "The car can take you home," Victoria offered, gesturing to her waiting vehicle. Andre shook his head. "I think I'll walk for a bit. Take it all in." They said their goodbyes, and Andre watched as Victoria's car pulled away, carrying her back to her world of corporate towers and boardrooms, a world that had once seemed as distant and inaccessible as another planet, but was now simply another part of the city he moved through with confidence. He began walking, his path taking him through familiar streets now seen through new eyes. The neighborhood where he'd grown up had shaped him, had informed his art and his perspective. Now he was giving back to it, creating something that would outlast any single exhibition or commission. The night was quiet, most businesses closed, but here and there lights still burned in apartment windows. Behind each one, lives unfolded, stories of struggle and success, of chance encounters and deliberate choices, of collisions that might lead to disaster or opportunity. Andre stopped at a corner, looking up at the sky visible between buildings. His phone buzzed with a message from Tori. "Thank you for tonight, for everything. This means more than I can say." He smiled, typing back, "You're just getting started. The best is ahead." As he continued walking, Andre thought about the strange symmetry of his journey, how Victoria had recognized his potential and given him a chance, and how he was now doing the same for others. The torn bag had become a symbol of that journey, its golden repair highlighting rather than hiding the moment of collision that had started everything. Some people might have seen the damaged bag as a loss, $20,000 destroyed, in an instant of carelessness. Victoria had seen it differently, and that perspective, the ability to find opportunity in accident, to recognize value where others might see only cost, had changed not just Andre's life but now the lives of countless others through the ripple effects of that single moment. Andre looked back at the Community Arts Center, its lights still glowing in the darkness. Tomorrow it would open its doors for regular classes, welcoming people of all ages and backgrounds to explore their creativity. Some would discover talents they never knew they possessed. Some might find career paths they'd never considered. All would experience the power of art to transform how they saw themselves in their world. All because of a collision on a rainy morning. All because someone had looked beyond a torn bag to see possibility. Andre turned toward home, his steps light despite the long day. Above him, the city stretched toward the sky, its buildings silhouetted against the night. The same view he had, painted so many times, each version slightly different, each capturing a moment that would never come again. The torn bag had been repaired, made more beautiful by its golden seams. His life, too, had been remade, not erasing the struggles of the past, but incorporating them into something stronger and more meaningful than before. As Andre walked through the sleeping city, he felt a deep sense of rightness, as if all the random chances and deliberate choices of his life had been leading to this moment. This path, not an ending but a continuation, a story still unfolding with each step forward. Behind him, the lights of the Community Arts Center finally went dark, as the last staff members locked up for the night. But what had begun there would continue to grow, creating its own collisions, its own opportunities, its own unexpected beauty from life's inevitable tears and repairs. And that, Andre thought as he turned toward home, was worth more than any bag, no matter its price.